Coach Jim Schlossnagle, welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. It is truly an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to breaking it down with you.
I have so many questions. I'm a big fan of yours. We have a mutual friend in Brian Kane that introduced us to have this conversation today. I first want to start with, Coach, when did you know that you wanted to be a coach? Was there a moment in time that you look back and that was like, yeah, that's when I knew I wanted to be a baseball coach?
Well, it was part a decision that was suggested to me, and then one that I had to make. I was a journalism major in my sophomore year of college at Elon, which is down in North Carolina, right in between Greensboro and Chapel Hill, and it was an NAIA school at the time. And my college coach called me in and said, hey, we both know you're not playing in the big leagues, and he goes, I think you'd make a good coach. And I had never thought about coaching. I always wanted to be a writer and write for Sports Illustrated or get into the broadcast community type thing. And I just thought my college coach hung the moon, and I stepped away from the game for a week. He told me to step away for a week and see what I think. And I did that and came back and said, sure, I'm all in. Had to change my major to education and went on to get my teaching certificate. And I was fully planning on after graduation, going to be a high school coach and a high school teacher. I did half my student teaching in high school and half my student teaching in kindergarten. So that's how I spent the spring of my senior year, and that's how it got rolling.
What did the journalism path teach you, Coach? I mean, now you're in front of media a lot. There's a lot of different interactions with the media. And knowing what you know now, what did that part of your life teach you?
Yeah, it's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. It gives me some empathy for what they have to go through, especially today. Back then you covered a story and no one got the news until the next day, in the newspaper. And now, it's immediate on Twitter or social media. Um, and so I think, it's allowed me to understand that they have a job to do as well. It certainly allows me to, I don't know if it's hold them accountable, but just be careful in what I say and when I say it, because sometimes people want to be first instead of wanting to be right. And so I learned some good lessons that way, being a little bit on the other side of it. It's obviously changed drastically now, but uh, you know, I feel like I've always had a great working relationship with the media, and feel like I'll give them access to our program as long as they understand that off the record means off the record, and I'll help you do your job if you help me do mine. And so, great question though.
So now you're one of the most prominent coaches in the entire planet at one of the best schools on the planet. I want to go back though. Walk me through some of the early days of your coaching. What was some of those early days like? What were some of the challenges like? I would say you probably still have a lot of challenges now. They're probably different than what you maybe had 20 years ago. But take me back to some of the early days. What were some of the challenges, whether it was in high school or was in college, and how'd you overcome some of those, Coach?
Well, I think I got super lucky. The summer that I graduated college in 1992, there were a vast amount of changes made in the NCAA with regard to athletics, but also specifically baseball, and college, coaching staffs were cut. They created this new thing called a volunteer coach, which we had in college baseball until 2 years ago. And that was a horrible thing because a lot of guys, they lost their job, or they said, I'm not going to work for free. But it was a great thing for me because I was 21, 22 years old, graduating college, and sure, I'll work for free. And I got super lucky. My last day, I had planned on going back to Elon for grad school, and then getting ready to coach in high school. And the head coach at Clemson University at the time, Bill Wilhelm, said, "Hey, we have this new thing called a volunteer coach, and would love for you to have come coach, help me coach the pitchers." And so I'm in Seneca, South Carolina, which is right outside of Clemson, and I'm a substitute teacher in and around Clemson, South Carolina, and would make a little money that way, and then I would just go in the office, and try to be around Coach Wilhelm, Jack Leggett, and Randy Mazey as much as I could. That was our staff, Hall of Fame type staff at that time, and I just learned so much. The challenges, man, I don't. I've always looked at this profession as such a blessing. Um, Challenges when you're young, challenges when you start a family, the finances of coaching. It's kind of like my son now is in the music business, and it's hard to make a lot of money early because everybody wants to do it, so they don't pay you much. Um, the upper echelon now of college baseball, is different. If you can get a job, you can make a very good wage. But I never the challenges are just, I would say the biggest challenges were, once I got married and started having children and a family, is just finding, I don't know if there ever is balance. There's no such thing as balance if you're going to be successful at something. But I think everybody would look back and say I probably could have been better at home during those times. But I really don't remember any super challenges in terms of the profession itself, other than the restrictions by the NCAA and just trying to work within the framework of all the rules.
I would love to dive in a little bit deeper on some of that. One of the things I love about listening to you on podcasts is you're really transparent, authentic, and open about some of the challenges of being a coach. And one of the challenges that I see in my work working with ADs and coaches is separating that who from do. And there's so much that goes into being a coach. You're wanted everywhere. You got to be doing a lot of things. ADs, there's never a night off. They're always at some sort of a sporting complex. So can we talk a little bit about, Coach, over the years, how have you done a good job at separating who from do, so you could still be the family member, still be the brother, still be all these other things, but then also be coach? I think it's a really tough thing to do.
Incredibly tough. We call it your identity versus your assignment. It's really hard for athletes these days with the social media comparison game. They compare everything they do to somebody else versus comparing themselves to who they are today versus who they were yesterday, which is what we try to get them to do. But as a coach, um, if you can find that line, like give yourself literally kind of like we ask the players to do, a physical act in which you transform yourself from coach to dad, coach to husband, coach to brother, whether that be the drive home, whether that be, as soon as I walk in the door and I don't know, grab a shower. And now, I mean, just like we teach our players in the mental game, I would encourage people to have a physical act that you literally separate yourself. Hate to use the word bipolar, but your multi-personality, you have to step away from it. That's never going to be fully possible. If you're married, you better have a spouse that is a great teammate that way. Maybe put some, as a college coach, answering the phone, set limits for yourself. And I think no is a very powerful word. You don't have to say yes to everything. Do you really need to be, if you're a high school athletic director, do you really need to be at every single event? Or can you hire some help where you can delegate that? Or maybe can you get there for tip off and then slide out? And I think people appreciate that more than people realize. An athletic director may feel pressure to be there the entire time, but any coach worth his salt is going to say, "Hey, man, you don't need to be here for my game. Like I'm good." If you have a good working relationship, so that that athletic director or coach can have a life as well, because you're going to need that time. You're going to need that time away from it. Um, and having, I'm a guy that's been through a divorce, and I would never wish that on anyone. And so I think you rank, we all know, faith, family, profession, you better keep those things in order as best you can, understanding that nobody who's had any level of success. I think it was Admiral McCraven here at the University of Texas who, did the famous "Make Your Bed" speech at our commencement. In one of his books, I read a lot of his books. In one of his books, he basically said, "Yes, something's getting sacrificed. If you're going to be ultra successful, something's got to give. And he gives a lot of credit to his wife for literally raising their children. So I think those things are across a broad spectrum, but I going back, I'm getting long-winded here, but I think having a physical act that separates you from what you do to who you are would help.
I love that idea. There's a book called The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. I had Todd on my show. He was the creator behind the Black Mamba of Kobe Bryant. So he talks about creating these alter egos. Super fascinating conversation and understanding what goes into creating alter egos. But one of the things he talked about was that alter ego is not just for sports, not just for Kobe Bryant, Brian Dawkins, Michael Jordan. It's not for just for these people. It's for everyday folks. He told this incredible story that I think relates to what we're talking about here. There was a military man who's an army recruiter, and he spent all day in his uniform. And after hearing Todd at one of his keynotes, he went up to Todd and said, "Man, I'm just having a hard time connecting with my daughters. Just seems like when I get home, there's just not real a lot of connection there. What can I do? How can I use this alter ego?" And so he kind of broke it down. And long story short, coach, what happened was he would come home, he'd still be in army uniform, and the daughters weren't really sure about what that was like, and there was just that not connection there. And so Todd had this idea, hey man, when you go home, I want you to put on your best dad outfit. I'm talking about jean shorts, high socks. I mean, play overdo the dad thing, right? And as
Yeah,
soon as he did that, the girls saw him in a different way. He had young children, saw him in a different way. A couple years later, he runs into him again and says, man, my life changed because I had that physical action of stepping into this. And so that was a great illustration of what it could look like. For me, for example, before I get into my house, I park my car in the garage and I want to take one solid breath. And that's just a defining moment for me to go from coach to going and being a dad. I think for baseball players, another great one that Brian talks a lot about is shower well. As soon as
right.
we shower off the game, we're moving on and we're moving forward. Talk a little bit about what it looks like for a baseball player.
Yeah, it's real simple. We call it I mean, you could say Boy Scout, I mean, student to athlete, we call it Boy Scout to bounty hunter, right? Or bounty hunter to Boy Scout, away from the field. I want our players to be the Boy Scout, the guys that they live their life well. They're making great choices. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Hold the door. All those things, and not that we don't want those things inside the stadium, but then when we get to the ballpark, you take your phone, you set it down, and you're transforming from student to athlete, from Boy Scout to bounty hunter. For one thing I try to never do is have a academic conversation with a player on a baseball field. I want those hours on the field to be I finally get to be a ball player. And then when it's over, when that practice or that game is over, if I need to talk to him about something away from the field or academics or anything else, I bring him to my office. We don't allow cell phones in the locker room. It's not, yes, I don't want them on their phone in the locker room. I want them to communicate. But the reason we do it is to create a physical act to step away from all the things that are outside of their life, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever, girlfriend problems, a bad test score, and just leave it there. And then go enjoy being a ball player. Because when you go back and turn that phone on, same for me as a coach, when you turn that phone on, all that stuff's going to be sitting there waiting on you. I mean, and so that's how we try to do it. Brian Kane's obviously, I mean, I'm his longest standing client, so we've been working together for a very long time. But yeah, that's how we try to draw that line so our players can be where their feet are and make the most of their time.
I'm curious, coach, over the last 20 plus years being a head coach, there are probably some moments where that who and do got a little cloudy for yourself. I'm sure we're all human. There's probably some moments there. What's your advice for the coaches out there who are maybe struggling with that who and do? It gets really cloudy, midway through the season, and I'm the coach, and everybody just sees me as the coach. Was there a piece of advice you would give to a coach maybe you've done that helps you kind of get clarity about separating those two when it's kind of in the middle of the moment or in the middle of the season? Is there a strategy that you'd like to recommend?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think it's going to be different for each individual person. Faith is a big part of my life. Um, I think having you know, Jesus had 12 disciples, but he really only had three other people on his most inner circle. And I think having an inner circle of, uh, call them advisors, personal advisors, maybe there's probably a better word for that, having an inner group of people that you can be transparent with, you can be vulnerable with. Um, it's better that it's okay maybe that one of those person I actually have one on my staff that I'm more open with than anybody else, but really needs to be somebody away from your job. I think so that you can find men are horrible about friendships. I mean, I'm horrible at it. I try to be a good friend, but if you ask a woman how many friends they have, they'll probably list off 10. Most of them, if a man may list one, and that's not good. You need to have, for me, when I was in Fort Worth, I had an awesome uh, small group of at my church, and just being able to meet with them once a week, and they don't see you as coach. I don't like being called coach away from the field. I was at the dentist yesterday, and the dental hygienist, said, "Am I to address you as coach?" I was like, "No, I mean you're not my player. I mean I'm Jim." And so I think just little things like that, I think can really help you, um, and certainly finding. I don't play golf. I like to fish a little bit, but I do think you have to have other things in your life, even if it's just dad. Part of the reason I've never been a golfer is because I've always felt like if I had 3 or 4 hours to kill, I was always away from my children. I wanted to spend it with them, and that was healthy from a dad standpoint. It was not healthy from my own self discovery standpoint. Like I've never gone skiing or any of these other cool things that maybe I'll try to do later in life if I can still do it. But it's not easy, man. I mean, this is a lifestyle. It's not a profession. And so you better really enjoy and although I've made many mistakes and I'll continue to make mistakes, I enjoy my job. I enjoy being around the players. It doesn't have to be on a baseball field. It can just be these guys passing through here and saying hello. So I think you better find the enjoyment in the stuff that's outside winning and losing, because that's where the identity comes in. If we've lost, I'm a horrible coach and I'm a horrible person. That's not true, right? If we win, doesn't mean you're the greatest coach and the greatest person. So I think just like anything else, you set a mission statement for yourself, set some core values for yourself, like you would in the program, live by those, identify with those, and then have a very small group circle of people that can hold you accountable to that and be supportive.
This is great, and that's where I wanted to go. Can we double click on that? I think as you move up in the ranks of coaching from youth to high school to college to pros, there's a lot of differences, of course, but winning becomes more and more important. And so, in a world that praises, performance and outcomes and wins and losses and money and fame, Jim, how do you stay away from that personally? And then how do you create a team culture that stays away from that when the world and the media wants everything to do with win-loss record? That's all they care about. You see in the NFL all the time. It's like, hey, I need you to win. I need you to win now. How do you stay away from that? And how do you do that with the team culture?
Yeah, I mean, I'm competitive too now. I want to win them all. And last year at A&M, we within a couple outs of winning a national title and didn't do it. But uh, I think you have to define your why. I mean, why are you coaching? If it's just going to be about wins and losses and championships, then man, that's pretty shallow over the course of time. And so if you can define what your why is, why do you do this, and then evaluate yourself on that, you got to understand that fans are going to be fans. And if you were on social media this summer, you saw what kind of beatdown that me and a couple of my coaches got when we left A&M to go to Texas. I actually try to give all those people grace because you can't ask people to be passionate about your program and winning and losing and being at the ballpark, and then when something goes awry, they get upset. So it is what it is, and that doesn't really bother me. I'm not on social media that much, especially in season. There's a lot of cool ways, by the way, where you can protect yourself on there from. I've learned that since I came to Texas, where people can post if somebody posts something negative about you, you actually never see it, and you can actually set it up to where it doesn't even go up. They think it went up, but it doesn't go up. Um, but I think, I'm getting away from your question a little bit. I just think that you you control. I don't like goals. If somebody was to ask a college baseball coach in the SEC, "What's your goal?" Well, they're all going to say, "Win the SEC and win a national title." I'm more about standards. Goals are performance based, which we can't control. Standards are behavior based. So that's with regard to our team. We set some standards. We set some core principles. We have a mission statement, and then that's our culture, and we try to live that throughout the entire year. And I tell the players, like, we can do all of these things right, which we're not going to, but we can make, if every single person in this room 100% of the time made 100% of the right decisions, that doesn't guarantee us anything. It does give us the best chance, but it doesn't guarantee us anything. And so I think if you understand the fragility of sport and young people, and the ball bounces one way, it can change everything. Then I think you can, and you know your why, and you know your standards and your core values. Then you can sleep a little bit better at night after a season that doesn't go your way, or one particular game that doesn't go your way.
Jim, would you be open to sharing some of those the mission and some of your kind of core principles and the behaviors and the standards? Would you mind opening that up, or is that secret sauce?
No, no. It's so the mission of our program, it's the mission that I used when I was at TCU, Texas A&M, and now Texas, is simply to help each and every person within the program become the very best selfless version of themselves. That's the mission. And I feel like if we achieve that mission, the key word being selfless, um, I want guys to be confident. I want them to have ego, a positive view of themselves, especially on a baseball field. Um, but they have to be willing to pour into their teammates. They have to be willing to give up something to get something. So that's why the word selfless is in there. So if everything we do is driving towards that mission, whether it be on a baseball field, whether it be nutrition, whether it be sleep, whether it be recovery, what in the weight room, academics, if that's the mission, then I really feel like if we're going to have talented players, especially at the University of Texas, then we're going to give ourselves the best chance. And then our core values are our core principles. At TCU, it was selfless excellence and energy, which they still use there. Here at the University of Texas, if you just spell out the word Texas, it's toughness, energy, excellence, accountability, and selflessness. And we define those. Those aren't just words on a wall. That's not something we put on a t-shirt. It's not some hokey thing. Like, this is literally communication we have every single day. There's a language to our program. And if you were to walk in here and ask one of our players, what does accountability mean? That means I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm not going to say it and then not do it. If they ask, well, hey, what's energy? What's that mean as a Texas baseball player? It means your attitude and your effort is a choice you make every day. And so those are very simply and clearly defined. And then we can all hold each other accountable in those, including player to coach. This isn't coach down, hey, you got to do this, then this, and this. I want to be, uh, I want to be held accountable. I want Rylan Galvon to, if he saw me walking through the facility with a bag of fast food, like, hey, coach, excellence means the best version of yourself in all areas. What do you got going there with that lunch, right? And so, I'm just a big believer in accountability across the board, and if we live by that mission statement and those core values, we'll give ourselves the best chance.
I love this idea, and the coaches that I'm working with, Jim, they're talking a lot about, hey, we love these core values. We kind of have them on paper, but I'm struggling getting them to ultimately to the hearts of the kids. It's one thing to go hand to paper, but it's another thing for these kids to live it. So what I'm hearing from you is a lot of it is conversations, maybe in the clubhouse conversation. Is there any other strategies you like when it comes to, hey, it's not just on paper, we're really living this? What would you say to those coaches?
Yeah, so we have very strict NCAA rules with regard to how much time we can have with the players with regard to baseball. But I have either weekly or bi-weekly, depends on the time of year, what we call a TOM, team organizational meeting. And so it might be 20 minutes. It's usually never more than 30. And that's just my time to get as creative as I can in building, maintaining, rebuilding, bringing back to center um, our culture. And so we'll do all kinds of different exercises. Today, we're going to be handing them out and beginning a process of what we call a perspective poster. I'm going to hand them a, I'm going to hand them just a normal card, a piece of card stock, 8.5 by 11, and they're going to take that over Thanksgiving and they can put anything they want on that perspective poster, whether it be, a picture of their mom or a family member that passed away or their dog, or it doesn't matter, whatever. And that way, during the course of the season, that's visible there. When you have a bad day, how bad was it compared to this? When you have a good day, man, I'm awesome compared. It's kind of a way to bring people back to center. So that's kind of our topic for the day. Another time we'll do, I have some black wristbands that have the word Texas on them. And to get one, you got to stand up in front of the team and you have to you have to quote our mission. You have to quote the core values. You don't know when you're going to be called on. And so at least they know them or can recite them. But we're just going to do all kinds of different exercises throughout the year, or ones with obviously all through Brian Kane. We have a well, better, how. What am I doing well? What can I do better? How am I going to do it? A start, stop, continue. What do I need to start doing to make me a better version of myself? What do I need to stop doing? We all have something that we need to stop doing. And hey, I'm doing something really well. What do I need to continue doing? And so I would encourage those coaches, like, you can't, you have to invest in it. It's like the mental game. Like you would never hit a guy a bunch of ground balls on the first day of practice and never hit him ground balls again and expect him to be a good infielder. You're going to hit him balls every day. Well, if you want your culture to be real, then you better invest in it. And shame on you if you're not. And you can't hold the players accountable to something that you're not spending time on. So everybody has to pick and choose what means the most to them. And if culture and core values and the investment in that means something to you, then you better spend time on it.
Perspective poster is so cool. Jim, what would be on your perspective poster? Do you do one? And if not, or if you do, or if you don't, what would be on your poster?
Oh yeah, certainly. I will do one. I have done one. At 54 years old and through life experience, uh, I don't need a poster to help me keep things in perspective. But my faith is certainly going to be at the forefront of that. My children, Jackson and Katie, um, you know, uh, just my own personal mission to help young people. We have our core values here at Texas, but I spent so many years at TCU. If I was going to pick my own personal core values, it would be the ones that we created at TCU, which is selfless excellence and energy. I want to be a selfless person. I'm not always going to be perfect in that. No one's perfect. There's only been one perfect person in the history of the planet, and they nailed him to a cross. I want to try to be excellent in all areas of my life and do better at exercise and do better at sleep and be a good friend. And then energy. I just want to wake up every day and try to be positive. My own natural instinct is to search out the negative so I can fix it. That's not healthy, I try every day to be a guy that brings what Coach Sark called it the other day. Be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Be somebody that raises the positivity and the energy of the room versus someone that just gauges it.
I think perspective is so powerful. I want to double click with that. So compared to what perspective, because I think sometimes what happens with coaches is we lose a close game and we think it's the biggest thing ever. And next day goes on and half the people forgot about it, right? But in the moment, we need that little bit of perspective. And it could be a game for a coach or an AD, it could be you lose a coach. There's a lot of scenarios here. Can we double click a little bit more about that? How can coaches
Sure.
beyond the perspective poster? How can coaches do a better job at having better perspective?
Yeah, I mean, tell them to take a trip to like New York City and walk down the street and see how many people care about the University of Texas baseball. Like, no, take a trip across the world. Have some interest, do some reading outside of sport and see what people are going through. For me, in 2013, I had something change my life. We joined our program with at TCU, a group called Team Impact, which connects athletic teams to critically ill, not always terminally ill, but critically ill children. And we had people can look this up on YouTube, but we got connected with a family, the Ahern family, and a little boy named Micah Ahern. His nickname was Superhero Micah, and he was a young boy that had developed a brain cancer, and he kind of lived life with us the last 3 or 4 years of his life. And I was already very connected to Cook's Children's Hospital in Fort Worth during my time there, but I got super connected with it because I was visiting Micah and being around his family all the time. And when you go, spend time in a children's hospital for 1 hour, I promise you, everything else in life falls into perspective because you see a child going through something, you see their parents and the pain, and then you see the nurses and the doctors that do this every day and you're like, what am I even worrying about? I mean, no, none of this means anything. The relationship with your players means everything, but the wins and losses, they truly, if I say, hey man, who won the national title in 1987? Like nobody can name that, right? And so it's just, I mean, I think, in the moment, yes, it's going to mean the world to you, but at the end of the day, just finish that sentence. Hey, we just lost. We just got walked off. Man, this feels horrible compared to really Micah, who ended up passing away at 7 years old. The toughest thing I've ever had to do in my life, for the most part, publicly, was his parents said, hey, you would have been his college coach. We want you to speak at his funeral. And man, you talk about speaking at a funeral for a dying 90-year-old is way different than speaking at a funeral for a 7-year-old. So just, I mean, I think people really don't care. They actually don't. They may care, even the fans here at Texas. I mean, they'll get upset for a little bit, but they're going to move on to the next thing. It's a big world, man. And just stay positive in your circle of influence with your players. And I think you'll find the joy in that. You got to find the spot where you're going to get the most joy because it's not going to be in wins and losses. They're too fickle.
Powerful words coming from a man in your position. Appreciate you being real with me on that. One of your core values in Texas is accountability. Something I get in conversation with a lot of coaches is I want better accountability within my players. I do a good job holding them accountable, but I'd like them to hold each other accountable. And in my book, Jim, we talk about this idea of the difference between calling each other out versus calling each other up and kind of the distinct difference of what that looks like. I'd be curious to hear from you and your coaching experience. How do you create accountability from player to player so it's not just always, coaches hold me accountable? What does it look like from player to player?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to establish a safe space within your program where telling the truth is okay and learning and teaching young people how to do that. Exactly what you said. I'm trying to help you and how I deliver my truth to you or what I believe to be the truth. That's a skill you have to learn. And so I think you got to give them opportunities to do that. Our pitching coach is really good at that. And so I think, having an open meeting where, hey, let's tell some, what advice would the three of you guys over there, what advice would you give Johnny sitting right here? And they may say, well, Johnny, man, you're such a great teammate. You're always on time. But hey, man, we see what you're doing away from the field in this area. We love you, and we think you can be a better version of yourself if you eliminate that for your life. And we want to be a part of helping you. How can we help you eliminate X, Y, and Z, right? And so I think that going back to culture, you have to create a space where, and I don't want this to sound negative towards fans, even our own fans here, but like the team is the team, man. The team is so sacred. you talk to any coach or athlete who the rest of their life, they end up searching for it, being on a team. And so if you can create that safe space where being around the team is sacred, nothing gets outside of this team, then that creates an environment where people can tell the truth and they don't feel attacked. Um, so I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, but I mean, that would be part of it. Another thing that I really like that we in terms of our core values and habits is we use an app called Habit Share. Brian helped us with that, and I use it, and we try to create those daily habits and put them on the app. We share them with each other. So my players, for example, my first one is make my bed, listen to Brian Kane podcast,
Me too,
have my
Jim. Me too. We do the same thing in the morning, brother.
there you go. Have my quiet faith time. I want to call my son every day. I want to call my daughter every day. I want to drink a gallon of water every day. Like there are maybe 8 or 10 things on there, and then the players can see that. And I could go on there and fake it, but I don't, and hope they don't. And then that way, if for some reason they can see they can see my actual habits, but they can also see when I checked in last time. If I checked in this morning or if I've missed 3 days, then Jalen Flores, I hope that he would go on there and say, Coach, you haven't checked in your habit share in 3 days. What the heck's going on? Right. So I think that level of accountability and shared accountability is very, very positive.
So what I'm hearing is it's about creating the environment where it's very natural to do so. I think some of the coaches out there, they might say, "Hey, man, I want this environment where we're creating accountability, we're calling each other up, but we're not creating the time to do so." And so the obvious answer here that we're pulling out is you got to create some time. So whether it's Florida State softball, Truthful Tuesdays, but let's create a specific moment where we all get together and we have this back and forth. Because if you don't, you're just assuming they do it on their own. They're probably not. So you got to create the platform for them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. Everything you do. So if you're going to determine that that's important to you and your program, then you have to create uh, an avenue and separate space for that. And I think, you know, somebody asked me the other day, what advice would you give your, 20-year-old self or whatever, or as a young coach? And one would be that one of the many things that would be is that if culture is important to you and all those things are important to you, which they should be because you're trying to develop the person. If you develop the person, if I take a super talented young person that's going to come play baseball at Texas and I can help him become the best version of himself, it's actually going to be way better than another 2 hours of practice. And so if you're scheduled to have a 3 hour practice today, could you get everything done in 2 hours and 30 minutes and then take that other 30 minutes and invest it in an activity like Lonnie? I'm assuming you interviewed Lonnie Almeida from Florida State softball.
It was their mental performance coach, Coach Ellie Cooper, that I was in touch with, and I heard her talk about it.
Yeah, so Lonnie, she's a good friend of mine. When I was the coach at UNLV, long time ago, they asked me to be on the the selection committee for the new softball coach, and she was an assistant coach at Stanford, and we hired her at UNLV. But she's awesome. Coach Sark does some things here on Wednesdays, I believe, that are truth telling and team building and gratitude stuff that he does with his team. So you can't just you hear these coaches talk about these things. I promise you, they're not just talking about it. They're very intentional with what they do. So if a coach wants that, then you got to work at it.
The powerful quote I heard you say the other day, it said this quote, "I'm in the character and leadership development business through the sport of baseball." I'll say that again. "I'm in the character and leadership development business through the sport of baseball." It begs me to ask, and I think it's kind of what we're talking about right now, Jim, what are the X's and O's of building character?
Um, Trying to model it first, but also being transparent that, like I said, there's only ever been one perfect person. So I'm going to fail. I'm going to make mistakes. The College World Series this past year, we lose the national title. I got asked a question right after the game, and I didn't handle it well. I handled it poorly, and I apologized to the writer after that. But I'm going to make mistakes. And I think that if players see that you're not preaching at them, you're right in the thick of it with them, then they're going to be more apt to listen and participate. And so I think we all know what the difference between good and bad, above, Urban Meyer, above the line, below the line behavior. Uh, and at the same time, we're going to make mistakes. And so, like Tom Brady said, if you want to be better, figure out what you're doing well and what you're not doing great, and do more that's good and do less that's bad. And so I think just it's not going to happen in a meeting. It's going to be the continual you set a standard and you hold people to it. Um, what do consequences look like? Like for me, 20 years ago, I'm the old school guy and I'm running players, and I don't think it works. Oh, I know it doesn't work, at least in my own opinion. You have to be willing to maybe lose a game, or which you really don't lose a game, you win over time. My form of discipline, I guess, or accountability is the bench. And so if you don't do if you do something that doesn't show great character, or you don't meet the standard, it's not that big a deal, man. We'll see you tomorrow. And if, or it's, hey man, we'll see you next week. And eventually, you maybe you're not a part of the club, but I think if players know that, man, this guy's not a freaking, he's not afraid. I disciplined a player this fall, and he said, well, can I just come run? Like, no, you're not covering to run. I'm not running you. You're just gonna not be here. You take away the thing they love the most. And so I think just that being super consistent in what you expect, both from yourself and from the players, I think you'll help get them to where they want. I know you'll help get them to where they want to go. But the easiest thing to do is to cut a player. Like Bobby Bowden told me one time, his son Tommy was a coach at Tulane, and I was an assistant coach in baseball at Tulane, and I got to meet Bobby, and he said the easiest thing to do is to cut somebody. The player, the fans think, he's tough and he's holding them accountable. But is that the best thing in the long-term interest of the player? Yes, if they continually make bad choices, maybe you have to separate that person from the program. But I can give you instances of guys that I mean, it was tough to keep my patience, but you look up now and these guys are successful. They're good parents. They're good dads. They call and say, Coach, thanks for sticking with me. And so those are the best phone calls, and those are the best moments. And that's really when I say I'm in the character and leadership development business. That's the truth. I'm not a believer in baseball for the overwhelming majority of players. Baseball is not a career choice. It's a dream that we hope works out for them, but we all know they're going to spend way more of their life not as a baseball player than they are as a baseball player. And so how can we help you through the sport of baseball, help them be successful in business, help them be a great dad, a great husband, a great brother?
I love what you said, Jim. The first word you said was model. And when I'm working with coaches, I really talk about when we talk about expectations, behaviors, there's kind of three steps. First, we have to define them. Then we have to manage them above the line, below the line. And then third, we have to be able to model them. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that in coaching, more is caught than perhaps taught. And sometimes I work a lot with basketball teams, and sometimes I'll see basketball coaches arguing with the refs, not only in one moment, but for maybe 5 minutes, going on, going on, going on. Yet we're asking the players to be able to flush it and be in that next play mentality. Yet our head coach is not doing those things. It comes back to the modeling the behavior. So I think that's such a huge part of it is the leadership and development really starts with the man or the woman at the top modeling the behavior that you want to see from down under. There's really some misalignment and incongruency when the players are sitting on the bench going, "Well, if you're not flushing it, why should I flush it?" What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It's certainly to thine own self be true. You better do your best knowing no one pays attention to, they don't pay attention to as to much as what you say as to what you're doing, and especially on a baseball field, body language, a coach and a manager in the big leagues, or a coach in baseball. If you watch a guy like Dave Roberts, for the Dodgers, or if you remember Joe Madden for the Cubs, he used to in Wrigley Field, he would be up on that perch for all the world to see. He wasn't down in the dugout where no one could see him. Madden would be up on the top step. It was like he was a freaking rooster, like overlooking everything. And so when you're that visible to everyone, then you know, every single move, every single grimace, every single thing you do matters. So yes, I do believe you have to model that as best you can, but you also know you're not perfect. And when you make mistakes, like I make them all the time, I made a couple bad ones in the World Series this past year. I'm not going to be perfect. Then when you do that and you recognize it, two things. One, you should recognize it, and then when you get your opportunity after the game, whatever it is, like apologize. Like say, hey guys, I just want you to know, like I really screwed this up. I hope you'll forgive me. Or have someone on your staff. I have the guy on my staff I told you about that's in my small circle. He at the end of every weekend series, say we play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll come uh in the morning and I have there'll be a piece of paper on my desk. I'm number 22. He says no, it says notes for 22, and it gives me. I ask him to do a lot of things from a baseball standpoint, but one of them is, he'll say, "Hey, you did a really good job when that kid struck out of being positive with him," or "Hey, your body language in game two in the fifth inning, it really sucked. It was horrible," and so I need that, and so I think modeling the behaviors you want are super important, but at the same time you're not going to be perfect. You watch Brian Kelly for LSU right now on the sidelines, they're struggling. And, I don't know Coach Kelly, and he's obviously a phenomenal coach. He has some moments where his palms are always up and he's in guys' faces. I'm sure he's super frustrated, and we've all been there. Is that how he is every day? I don't know. But I think you got to maintain your cool, man. And I've had some people say to me, like, I'll watch you and you show no reaction. Like even your team just hit a grand slam and you show nothing. And I was like, well, I'm like a duck, man, during games. I'm super quiet on the top, but understand that inside I'm going crazy. My feet are going, my mind's going a mile a minute. I don't have time to be upset. I don't have time to celebrate because I'm thinking about the next play. Uh, but I think coaches need to be vulnerable.
It's another topic I want to get into with you. I'm a big believer, Jim, that when talent meets talent, talent is no longer enough. And at your level, everybody's talented. So I'm curious whether you want to take this from a coaching standpoint or a player standpoint. And when talent meets talent, talent is no longer enough. When you've got some of the best talent in the country, what do you think the key separators are for the guys that are playing or the coaches, whatever way you want to take this, versus maybe the rest of them? What do you think the key separators are?
Yeah, there's just simply one. That's why I invest in the mental game so much, in my opinion. Outside of health, obviously you gotta have your best players stay healthy for the most part. But the main thing is you can't be in control of your performance unless you're in control of yourself. And so mental skills can be practiced. They can be developed. They can be taught. They can be enhanced. And so one thing I'm proud about with the teams that we've been a part of coaching, and when I say we, it's our coaches and Brian Kane been a big part of that, is we never use the word step up. We never talk about the big game. If anything, the bigger the game, the looser we are. And so I think if you have a physical routines that allow you to stay in the moment and you practice those on a daily basis, you challenge players. We use crowd noise in practice. Anything we can do to up the ante, up the heart rate when you get in those moments. I mean, and at bat here at Dish Falk right now with no one in the stands, and at bat in the SEC, and at bat in the College World Series, and at bat in Yankee Stadium, it's just an at bat. It's the same exact thing. The environment is what has changed. And so the ability to take a deep breath on a focal point, the ability to have a positive affirmation, the ability to have what we call a red light release, where if it happened 1 second ago, it happened a million years ago, to truly play the game pitch to pitch, right? I think being in control of yourself so you can control your performance I mean, to me, that's going to be the separator between the two teams that are crazy talented, because you're right. In this conference, you're never going to have better players than the other team. You have to have as good of players as the other team. And now we're going to, now you just go play the game. And, but I believe that clearing breath and the ability to stay in the moment that's going to be the separator.
I want to close down. I talked to Kane last night for about 30 minutes, and one of the things I asked him was, "Hey, what do you think is Coach Jim Schlossnagle's best strength?" And this was so cool. I want to highlight this today to share with you today and have you double click on it as well. He said, Jim is the only coach in my entire career who has ever asked me to evaluate him as much as his players. He's the only coach, 20 plus years, who has asked me to evaluate him as much as his players. I think there's a lot of insight, and this is a great place to kind of close down today. Why is that important to you? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, just I keep going back. Nobody, there's no perfect person. And if I'm going to ask our players to be the best version of themselves, then I have to be continually searching out how I can be better. And I need someone. Brian does an awesome job of that for me. Uh, we have a weekly Zoom call every Tuesday, where we're talking about what we're doing with the team, but he's checking in with me on my routine, my recovery, the things that I struggle with away from the field, my family, those kind of things. And so, uh, yeah, I don't have all the answers. You can look in the mirror, but it's easy to lie to yourself. And when you have somebody uh, that knows you and you ask them to be a truth teller to you, that's a gift, man. Brian Kane's a blessing to me in my life. Chuck Box here on our staff is a blessing to me in my life. And so I would encourage the players know that you don't know it all. The players know you fail too, right? So just just keep striving to be better. That's all you can do. And when you screw up, sun's going to come up, move on, water under the bridge, learn from it, and move on. And Brian does that a lot for me.
Last thing, coach, a lot of coaches listening, either one, two, there's been a ton, one, two, or three pieces of advice that you would love to give specifically to high school coaches. One, two, or three pieces of advice to leave us for today. What would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that have empathy for your players, especially in the sport of baseball. Baseball is a real simple game that's really, really, really hard to play. The game's a lot easier from the third base coaching box than it is in the batter's box. And so I would say, what you permit, you promote. Be careful what you allow, because uh, if you're not coaching it, then it's on you. And so, and then certainly the third thing is what we started off with is understand your identity versus your assignment. Your assignment in the moment is high school coach or high school athletic director, but that's not always going to be your assignment. Your assignment may change, but your identity can't. You need to continually work on that, and who you are as a man or woman, who you are as a husband or wife, who you are as a mother or father. That's your identity, because your assignment's going to change over time.
Jim, this was so much fun. You've got a brand new Texas Longhorn fan here. Hook 'em. I'm so excited to watch you guys. How can my listeners best support you? Where would you like to kind of point my listeners to be a Texas fan?
Oh yeah, I mean certainly, they can find me on Twitter. I don't I don't tweet a ton, but certainly get information that way. And if they're ever in Austin, shoot me an email. We'll get them out to a ball game. Or Austin's a great town, and this is just such a really cool place. And so we would welcome. We do a lot of high school coaches. Our practices are open to high school coaches, male or female, athletic directors. All they got to do is shoot me an email. We'll get them here on campus. They can spend the day with us. We've had probably 6 or 7 groups of entire staffs come through. I don't have all the answers. In those environments, I learn as much from them as they do from us, and so our program is open, and we would love to host you here.
Jim, awesome, man. Thanks for doing this.
You got it. Hook 'em.